Well, hello. I'm here with Doug to talk about Telegram and other things. And it is Friday, August 30, 2024. And
Oh, Sam, you got to update us on Telegram. What's going on there?
that's the big story. I mean, it's
Yes.
everywhere, and there's many articles about it. So Tele Telegram
Well, wait.
advertises. Yeah,
Let's back up and
yeah.
let's kind of set the stage because we talked about this last time, and let's do a quick recap.
Yeah, well, I didn't even know it had happened last time. But Telegram advertises as an encrypted messaging app. And it's very popular in Russia because you can not only talk to people one on one, you can make a channel like a news broadcast and then invite people to watch your news broadcast one to many, which is very popular. So they sort of use it as like a
Like
news
Twitter,
broadcasting system.
sort of.
And there are people with clips of the front lines on the war in Ukraine and everything. And so, but Pavel Durov, the owner of Telegram, made it in Russia, but he was forced out of Russia years ago, and he sort of moved around looking for a home. And he went to France and was arrested. And the accusation in France is that Telegram is posting illegal content like child pornography and scams and crimes, which is absolutely true, and that he's
Yeah.
not doing enough about it, and he's not responding to government orders to uh, register as an official purveyor of encrypted services in France, which apparently you have to register and maybe get regulated. So they arrested him and held him for a while, and then released him, I think, pending further court actions. And so this led to a lot of excitement. One, there are a lot of issues. One of them is Matthew Green came out, a famous cryptographer, and he said, I've been saying for years Telegram is not actually encrypted. This is all garbage. Um, what turns out that Telegram is not encrypted by default. It is possible to go deep into the settings and find a hidden button that will encrypt one chat, but only works under certain circumstances and nobody knows about it, so nobody's using it. And the one-to-many chat, which is the main thing people use it for, is never encrypted. So he says, and yet I've told him, I've published public articles about this, and he continues to post it as a secure message app. So I think this makes me think he's malicious. He's deliberately fooling people into using it. And certainly, like I mentioned this, one of my Russian students said, well, everybody in Russia uses it. We all think it makes us safer. And, it reminds me of CryptoCat was another one. Back in the Arab Spring, people used Twitter to complain about the government, which is not encrypted at all at the time. And then they got CryptoCat, which was encrypted, although with sort of sloppily designed encryption that wasn't all that secure, but it was better than nothing. Anyway,
Yeah. So my sources tell me that Telegram is encrypted, but it's their own encryption. It's never been held up to public scrutiny.
well, Matthew Green looked into it and it uses
Yeah.
AES with a sort of weird proprietary way to handle the knots or something. And he says that's probably okay. It's a little strange, but it's not terrible. But the point is, most of the people don't have the encryption turned on and they don't know that.
I see. So it's something you need to enable
And you can
that is
only
not.
enable it after
Yeah,
you've already contacted the other person and they're online right now so it can exchange the key.
I see.
So you
I
can't even
see.
turn it on and leave it on. You have to turn it on
Yeah.
per chat
Okay.
and only one
Okay.
to one. So it's very limited. That's what he says. So
Yeah.
So that's one issue is that Telegram is in fact a pretty crappy encrypted app. But another one is if France is going to arrest him for reasons like this, then why don't they arrest Mark Zuckerberg for having Facebook WhatsApp that's encrypted and the person in charge of Signal, Meredith Whittaker or something? They say those people
Yeah.
better stay out of France if this is the way the law is going to be. And
Yeah. Yep.
and yet,
Yeah.
and then today, I think the Wall Street Journal came out with another article, which is very interesting. It says that if years ago, the Telegram founder went to France at the invitation of the government, they said, please move to France. We want you to move here. And there's persistent rumors that people keep getting arrested because he claims to be protecting all your privacy from government, but it appears like what he really is he's in cahoots with the government and they makes a deal with them that I'll identify the users you don't like in return for you letting me use base my app here. And that's what the French government wanted to do was to get basically a backdoor into Telegram.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's
Hmm.
pretty and another European country, I think Brussels, is now investigating Telegram because they just passed all these European technological regulation laws. And one of them was that if you are a large provider then all these extra rules apply to you. But that's 45 million monthly users. So Telegram claims to have less than 45 million monthly users, which is apparently false, in order to escape the regulations. So,
Yeah. So I was told, or my sources, over 1 billion people, that's amazing, use Telegram.
oh, it's huge.
Yeah. So think about it. That's 1/8 of the world's population.
Oh, yeah. But I think WhatsApp is probably like 3 billion. I mean, at least Facebook is.
Is it?
Well,
Yeah.
Facebook and Meta is. And I don't know how many of them use the Messenger, but I would assume a lot of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
WhatsApp is actually end-to-end encrypted now. So it would be a more secure solution. And so, of course, would be Signal.
Yeah, so, interesting. And, I'll just bring this up, and I'm sure you've heard of this. In the US, if pardon me, if he would have landed in the US, we have Section 230 of the
Yeah.
Communications Act of 1934.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking this up, provides immunity from legal liability for providers of
Absolutely.
interactive computer services.
Yeah, this is what Al Gore helped pass, which was described as him inventing the internet. Because
Yeah.
this makes it possible to have social networks, and that's what one of these articles said. They say almost all encrypted apps are based in America for this reason, because only in America can you have a truly encrypted app, and when the cops come and subpoena you, say, "Well, I don't know anything. Everything's encrypted," and that's an acceptable answer. Every other nation pretty much won't allow that, so they tend
Yeah.
to be founded here.
So, this also would apply. I think I heard some people talking about this to AT&T, Verizon. If somebody is communicating that over telecommunications lines, isn't that the same thing? If we're talking about child pornography or
No, because of Kalia.
no?
I mean, the government can come and say, "I need to see what they were sending," and you have wiretaps. I mean, it's not end-to-end encrypted. None of that stuff is. The
No,
phone
no,
company phone
but
company can monitor it and they can hand it over to the government and they can.
yeah.
But you're saying they don't block everything. Well, yes, they do take action. I think when the government requires them to. Like I know they do block certain kinds of offensive phone calls.
Oh, they do?
Well, people complain. People get harassers get blocked and stuff.
Oh, that's blocking though a number.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
that's
that
and I think Facebook will cancel your account if you're posting like offensive stuff.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is with Telegram,
Yeah.
the reason he was arrested is because he's supposed to be monitoring
Right.
uh,
Content
um, w-
moderation.
content moderation.
Yeah.
So with AT&T, for example, telephone call, there's no content moderation going on there.
No, there isn't. You're right. There are people that actually are just the transmission lines.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Telegram doesn't seem to get that exception. And I know if you commit like piracy of music in America, you'll get takedown notices. But I guess if you were to send that over Signal somehow, I don't know how they would ever know.
Yeah. So you were saying Signal and WhatsApp, why
Yeah.
are they getting away with it? And I shouldn't say
Because of
getting away
Section
with it.
230, I think.
But that's in the US. In
Yeah.
France, what I'm saying is if you had um, somebody doing something illegal over telephone lines,
Yeah.
then you got to hold the telephone company, telecommunications company is liable.
Well, in principle, you could, but nobody seems to go there. It seems
Yeah,
like,
right.
unfortunately, I'd like it to be really clear what the law is, and I think it's not true at all. I think there are just enforcement decisions made, sort of as a tradition that
Always.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's the problem. And I think you're quite right, and I think it's just that even though what they're doing, you could make an argument that it's illegal. They haven't, in fact, irritated people enough that they've decided to pursue that yet.
Yeah.
Which is the thing,
Yeah.
I was real horrified to just learn this years ago. I thought I was a white hat hacker and I was very carefully obeying the law. And then I found out there was some question about the legality of some of the things I was doing. And I discovered there is no such thing. There's a degree of legal risk. And,
Yeah.
the more nasty things you do, the more legal risk there is. Even if you're trying real hard to be very careful, there is still some legal risk. And it's just at some point you're irritated enough that people bother to prosecute you. It's not at all like there's a line and on one side you're bad and on the other side you're good.
Yeah, yeah. And as we've seen with just criminal prosecution, there's a blurry line there because we get a lot of people who get falsely convicted.
We do.
And yeah, and my point there is even though you have evidence, clear-cut evidence
Yeah,
showing that you didn't commit the crime, you can still be convicted. And
you
we've seen
can.
cases like that.
Yeah, and there's and I read an article and they said it really is a disaster in the legal system that Al Capone went down for tax fraud and that Trump went down for these financial dealings in New York City that were really only misdemeanors. They say it shows how bad our system is, that criminals commit huge crimes, they can't prosecute them for that, so they prosecute them for some little thing, and that's
Yeah.
what they end up getting in trouble for. It shows that system is really not working very well.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been told something like 90-95% of the cases, criminal cases, are plea bargained.
Right. That's
So
another issue.
yeah,
They don't really go to trial, they just make a deal. Yeah.
yeah. So sometimes you're if you're innocent and you say, I want to go to trial, the evidence will show that I'm, not guilty.
Yeah.
You wind up going to jail anyway. You get convicted.
Very often they plea bargain and to a lesser crime because they're
Yeah,
convinced that it's going to mess with their family. This is what Michael Cohen said. They said they were going to arrest my
yeah,
wife. So I said, fine, I'll just agree to whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So I've got a new term that just came up with this, and we talked a little bit before we started recording.
Yeah.
The new term, it's called false dividends.
Hmm.
And I think this is going to come into our lexicon. And what false dividends are is where you have something that factually occurred, but then there's a meme that's created or something, a parody of it. And so now you don't know if the parody is real or the original event is factual, and it's blurring the line between, well, maybe the original event that there might be a photo or video of was really doctored and the meme is a result of the meme. And so what it's doing is it's blurring the truth.
Yeah. You should give
And
that Kamala Harris example because that makes it clear.
okay. So Kamala Harris had an election or
A rally. Yeah.
a campaign rally. Thank you. Yeah. And the claim was that she had 10,000 people there. And by all accounts, she did have 10,000 people there. There was a meme that was created, we assume by Trump's team or Trump's administration campaign team, that put a sickle and everybody into communist kind of garb or dress, if you will. And it looked like she was Stalin talking to the masses, and they were all in line. That obviously did not happen. That was false. But that's been disseminated. And so now the question comes up, were there really 10,000 people at the rally? And now you don't know what the truth is because you have a meme and you're blurring the line between the two.
Yeah, and that started. Trump just made a statement like the next day, say she just made that crowd with AI generation based on nothing. And that statement by him was not very convincing or impressive. But this other technique of just congregating a bunch of obviously fake AI images is a more clever way to poison the well there. That will more
Yeah,
likely make people think, well, these are obviously fake. Maybe hers was fake too. And by the way, I was just looking at our last podcast, and it has a picture. The still on YouTube is like me drinking out of a cup, and it looks like it's fake and AI generated. The cup seems to be
yeah,
the wrong size at the wrong angle. It's a real picture, but if you told me that was AI, I would believe it.
yeah, interesting. So, this is again new term called false dividends.
Yeah, I don't
And
understand the dividends part.
well, you're getting rewarded by coming up with, false information.
Yeah,
So
kind
it
of
goes,
propaganda. Yeah.
yeah, propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, flat out lies.
And this
And
is
this,
what Stalin did and what Hitler did, and also what Steve Bannon strongly said. He said, what you do is you flood the zone with shit. You fill fake stories everywhere, and now nobody even can tell what the truth is, and they all just get disgusted and throw away the newspaper, and now you can all believe whatever you want them to believe.
and isn't that pretty much what's going on right now?
Oh,
We,
yes.
especially with the COVID vaccine and the origin of COVID.
Oh man, I was talking to one of my friends just a few days ago, and he said, I'll never take the vaccine, but since COVID is rising, we're going to have another round of ivermectin. And it's incredible how many people believe this stuff.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really is success of Steve Bannon. I mean, he's overridden all the scientific community with false medical information. I wouldn't have believed it. And now Trump is saying he's going to stop all vaccinations, stop all funding of schools that have vaccination mandates. So this will bring back polio and whooping cough and all that. I mean, in order to appeal to his base, and especially now that his partner is now RFK Jr., much more than it is
Oh,
JD Vance, they're totally on all vaccines are evil.
yeah, yeah. So RFK Jr. runs the Childhood Defense Fund or Foundation,
Yeah,
which is protecting kids by not getting them vaccinated.
right, right. That's his huge cause is anti-vax.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He wrote a book not too long ago, and there's some flat out lies. There's a doctor that he interviewed
Hmm.
about COVID, and I think about also I think he interviewed him twice. I think he interviewed him many years ago, and the doctor recorded the phone call, so he has what the actual conversation was. And RFK Jr. completely misquoted him. And
Yeah,
he said, I talked to the doctor, and this is the result of our conversation. And RFK Jr. went on Joe Rogan, and RFK Jr. he tried to get the book corrected. They wouldn't do it. The second thing he tried to do is get on Joe Rogan after RFK Jr. was on. They wouldn't let him on.
right. Well, I
Yeah.
saw a Joe Rogan clip of a real vaccine expert talking to him, and he's just unrelentingly stupid. He says, you should get the vaccine. He says, oh, I don't know. I hear if you get the disease and the vaccine, maybe I should get the disease first and then take the vaccine later for even more protection, stuff like that. He's amazingly stubborn,
Mm.
and you can't get through to him with logic or facts.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, is he in it for the money?
Well,
Do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I
No.
don't know much about Joe Rogan. I tried watching his show a couple times. I can't understand it at all. Same thing's true of Taylor Swift's music. I'm just not the right generation for this stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think the thing about him is he was a comedian and like a commentator on sports, on wrestling or something. And so he just has a bunch of sort of poorly thought through beliefs from a sort of uneducated perspective. And I think he's sincere about it. I think he's just kind of that's his appeal, is he's kind of a dumb everyman guy
I see.
that hasn't
Okay.
really studied anything in depth and just has sort of quick takes on things, sort of from what he hears from the guys around him. I think that's why people love him. He's just sort of an everyman like Homer Simpson.
Yeah, okay, got it. I just heard a from Fauci and others on the origins of COVID. And again, it's kind of there are three possibilities. One is it was a lab leak, the
Right.
other is from a wet market, and the third is we don't know, some other source.
When people suggest an intentional weapon, which is version of the lab leak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So it either came from the lab or it came from the wet market
Right.
or something someplace else.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's eliminate someplace else because there's no evidence for that. If you compare the lab leak versus the wet market, the lab leak is possible, but there's no evidence that firmly, positively points in that direction.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the wet market, the overwhelming evidence all points to the wet market. And the answer is we'll probably never know for sure because the Chinese, as soon as they knew there was a disease there, they sanitized the market and people ran.
Yeah.
But we do have pictures and we do have some hard evidence that sure points to the not being the lab leak, but the wet market as being the source.
Yeah. And this is what Fauci says, which seems reasonable. He says the evidence points that most likely is the wet market, but you
Yeah.
really can't exclude anything. We don't have absolute proof.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
And we'll probably never know. So
Right.
interesting.
Right.
So, on the same lines of these false dividends,
Mhm.
um, Iran has now taken a page from Russia's playbook on hacking campaigns. Have you been following that?
Not much.
No. So Iran is now trying to influence our campaigns, just like Russia has in the past, by using false dividends, essentially, the same playbook.
But what does Iran want? And now I know Russia wants Trump in, obviously, because he will just let them take Ukraine. But
Yeah.
what does Iran want? Did they think the Republicans would be nicer to them than the Democrats or something?
Um, no, they want this is an attack against democracy. It's
Okay.
also against our quality of life, our standard of life.
They just want to create chaos.
Yeah, they want to create chaos. They want to disrupt us.
Okay. Well, I can understand that because we really mess with them. They just we're just the great Satan to them. We're just anything to weaken us would be seen as a benefit to them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because they've been doing it, but now they're following the playbook from the Russians.
Well, the Russians are experts at
Are
propaganda. They're
yeah,
imitating them is not a bad move.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, they're following the successes that Russia has used before in the past.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we're probably also seeing North Korea involved in this, China to a certain degree. No?
I've read China is doing it,
Yeah,
although they mostly just want us to have like pro-China messages. Like they so TikTok is full of like pro-China propaganda.
yeah.
But North Korea, I don't think North Korea is a bunch involved in propaganda. They seem to be focusing primarily on stealing money to fund their country. I think they're too busy doing that to get
I
involved in
see.
propaganda. And I think, from North Korea's point of view, we're like completely alien. And I'm not even sure they believe that any one American government would be better than any other. They
No,
see us
no,
all.
but sorry. What I'm saying is they're trying to disrupt our quality of life, if you will.
I don't know. I haven't
No.
seen evidence of that. It might be true.
Okay.
Might have
Okay.
something to do with the language barrier too. I don't think of them as engaging in political propaganda over here, but maybe they are.
Yeah. Okay. Again, more quality of life.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and not politics.
They certainly do see us as terribly evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what stories you got for us?
Well, there's another one of the endless disclosure stories. So Columbus got hacked, and then the Columbus government people came in and
Wait, Columbus meaning
Columbus, Ohio.
yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio got hacked. It's funny, my phone pops up a message from healthcare is the caller ID. I'll just let that leave a message. That just looks like bogus. Anyway, um, so they got ransomware apparently, but the official in Columbus, I think the mayor, said, "Oh, they didn't get any personal information. There's nothing to worry about." And then it got dumped on the dark web. And so a security researcher found it on the dark web and he downloaded stuff from the dark web and he said, "No, this is all the personal information of all kinds of people in Columbus. It really did leak." And the mayor didn't care. So he went public and started telling people this. And so the official in Columbus got a court order to stop him. And it's interesting. Now, in the first flush, I think this is a standard story where they shoot the messenger. You're a ethical hacker. You're revealing a real problem, and people are just telling you to shut up. But in fact, the reason he was able to get a court order is the judge said, "Well, it's illegal to download that stuff from the dark web. That's stolen property." And he's right, of course. And so the
Yeah.
guy's now, he said, his complaint is, "I'm now the only person on earth prohibited from downloading this information off the dark web." But and anyway, so it is kind of ridiculous. This shows what happens. I mean, the government leaders may be in good faith trying to protect their country, their city. I mean, they feel like the ethical hacker is the bad guy. You went and dug up this information, you're exposing it. No one would have found it if you hadn't done that, which is of course wrong. But I can see how the government leader and the judge are both proceeding in good faith. And this reminds me of what we were saying before. If you do security research, you are kind of breaking the law. and you rely on people understanding that it's for a better good. But in principle, you're at a legal risk, and so you have this ridiculous situation where enforcing the letter of the law is in fact making the people of Columbus less informed and less safe. Just like companies that prosecute ethical hackers, so only the unethical hackers get through. Anyway, this keeps happening over and over.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it keeps happening over and over because uh, am I
Until
think
people
we're
get,
out of
yeah, it keeps happening until people actually understand how security works. And it is kind of weird. And I know the big step forward for me, in my experience, was the DoD bug bounty a few years ago. When the DoD had a bug bounty program, then a lot of people said, oh, it's okay to admit that we have problems and let people hack you and tell you about it. But at first, that sounds insane to authority figures, and I can't really blame them for that.
Yeah. So, along the same lines, Dick's Sporting Goods, which is a
Yeah.
sporting goods chain, just got is a victim of a cyber attack. And the team inside of Dick's Sporting Goods sent out an email, or I guess it was an email, but a message or a text, I'm not sure how they did it, to employees saying, oh, there's some ongoing maintenance issues. Our email system will be down, is what they said internally.
Well, if you get hacked and you're cleaning up after the hack, I guess you could call that maintenance if you want to look at it that way.
It depends how you want to spin it.
Yeah.
And then they had to publicly go out and say that the company discovered unauthorized third-party access to its information system, including portions of its system containing certain confidential information.
I wonder what that is.
Well, it's just saying that probably credit card
Oh,
information, customer data,
yeah.
possibly, we don't know, but possibly employee data, HR information.
Well, if they get that, there are actually breach disclosure laws. You really have to tell people about that.
Well, they are. They publicly admitted, but they haven't admitted what's been breached.
Man, I imagine, well, I have to see the letter of the law. I thought you had to be more clear than that. This reminds me of Uber. Uber got hacked years
Yeah,
ago, and then
yeah,
they paid about the bug bounty. They paid the ransomware guy, and then they said, "Oh, this was a bug bounty situation. This wasn't a hack." And they tried to get away with saying they didn't get hacked. It was just an ethical hacker, and they eventually had to pay a fine for that. That was
yeah,
considered too misleading.
yeah. Well, it all comes down to spinning it, but I think it's interesting that internally they're sending out one message, externally and legally they're saying something else.
It's quite
And
common. Yep.
yeah, and to be fair, or they're stalling, either one.
Yeah.
They're saying we're not sure the extent and what information, which is probably true, but also a stalling tactic.
Yeah, and I used to be real self-righteous and angry at these companies, and now I have more sympathy for them. The first time you get hacked, you have no idea what to do. You don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
Uh, you flail around, you ask lawyers, and a lawyer will say, "Oh, don't admit anything." And you know, I can understand how at least the first time, you probably just have no idea what to say, and you say a lot of stupid things.
Yeah, well, I will say from what we know so far, Dick's Sporting Goods does have a CRT, cyber response team,
Yeah,
and they did activate immediately.
yeah.
And I guess part of their CRT team and plan is, and this is pretty typical, is not to say too much publicly.
You certainly have to be careful what you say, but you should say things that are accurate. It sounds like their PR team is not really up to speed yet.
Yeah, well, it's like Disney, who eh, we talked about that, I think, last week. There was a husband who lost his wife at a Disney restaurant for food allergies, and she
Right.
died. And he was trying to sue Disney for wrongful death. And Disney said, oh, wait a minute here. 3, 4 years ago, you signed up for Disney Plus trial account and you agreed to the terms of service,
Yeah.
which says that you will not sue Disney or any of its entities or subcorporations or, anybody affiliated with Disney. You'll go to arbitration.
Yeah.
And he said, well, these are two different issues. This hit the press and it didn't go over well PR wise in the court of public opinion.
Yeah. And I
And
think they
Disney
finally,
backpedaled on that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it advertises how much the law is not cut and dried. It's just sort of fuzzy gray areas.
But I will have to say Disney had a good point.
Well, they had an argument. It's like you talk to your lawyer and it's a judgment call. Do you think you
Yeah.
can get away with this? Like I remember when Cloudflare got hit with the big DDoS many years ago, one of the engineers said, I know how to stop it. Run this program and we'll reflect it back and take them down with their own traffic. And he said, let me talk to my lawyer. And he said, I called my lawyer and he said, to his credit, he didn't exactly say no. Now the question is, can we get away with that? Is that illegal? And the answer is, well, I can make an argument to defend it, but there is an argument that it's bad too. So you have to try to judge the risk.
Yeah. And ultimately, it'll come down to a judge or judges if it gets appealed.
Yeah. And so you're really asking for sort of an estimate. How big is the risk
Yeah.
and is it
Yeah.
worth doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, even if you're in the right, there are times when you're still wrong.
There's no such thing as being completely in the right. That's just what
Yeah.
I was slow to realize. And I thought about the college. I mean, the City College is pretty much as benevolent an institution as you could possibly imagine. They give you classes for free, and yet they get sued all the time for something wrong, like the sidewalk is too steep or the doors aren't right or something. Even when
Yeah.
you're like totally as good guy as you can be, there's still something people can complain about.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, that's it for me.
Oh, okay.
Anything else from you?
I think I have another. Oh, yeah. There's another one. Meta is going to fund their data centers in 2027 using next generation geothermal power. And I was not aware of next generation geothermal power. People are pushing this as the new way to avoid greenhouse gases. You inject water deep underground and perform fracking in order to create a region of like high pressure, which you then use for power. And it sounds bogus to me, but apparently this is
Hmm.
real. People are taking it seriously. Sage Geosystems is a company run by three former Shell Oil executives who have decided to use this, and they say it's going to use the Earth as a kind of battery to store power. And they say this will be carbon free and it will be reliable, not coming and going like solar and wind. It'll be a steady supply of power. So apparently, the original geothermal that I heard decades ago was where you just find a pocket of like hot water in the ground. And then in that one spot, you could have that water bubble up as steam or something and drive your turbine for a while. Um,
Right.
and this is where you somehow artificially create that condition of high pressure underground with fracking. So,
Hmm. So it sounds good, like everything does
well,
initially.
Well, my first thought actually is it's not because the other one turned out to be environmentally destructive because the water was in fact full of like heavy metals or something and bringing it up and fracking is considered pretty dangerous because it leaks
Right.
toxins into the water supply. So I wouldn't assume this is benign, but when they call it a battery, they make me think of another technology where what you do is pump something down like air or water, get it under pressure, and then release the pressure later. And so it's just a way to store energy. So I'm not entirely clear about this.
Yeah, you're right. When you mention the term battery, that sounds like storage, recharging, and discharging
Yeah.
versus traditional geothermal is we're taking energy out of the earth.
And therefore, of course, you can only do it in a certain spot. And after a while, you've used it up and it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. I'll tell you a quick story. If you ever visit Iceland, there's a large swimming pool called the Blue Lagoon. And you go there and it's an enormous pool. It'll probably fit 1,000 people or 2,000 people. Very popular if you visit Iceland.
Hmm.
Turns out that it's all, and you're kind of led to believe it's natural. It turns out it's all waste runoff from their geothermal power plants. And so they've got the water that pumps up this, I think it's seawater, that they come up that's hot. They take the energy to produce electricity and I believe heat. And then the water was supposed to go back into the rocks and percolate down and then become hot again. But it wouldn't percolate through the rock. So somebody had the ideas, oh, we'll make a big swimming pool.
Yeah. Well, that's doing the
So
best you can. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so now they have a tourism industry from their waste, which is pretty brilliant.
Well, one thing I would want to know is, are there toxins in that water, like arsenic or something? Because often that,
Well, they claim that there's mud in there that has healing powers. And I don't know, but I'm sure they must be monitoring the water for toxins and heavy metals, things like that.
yeah, maybe.
Maybe is the
Yeah,
correct answer, right?
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many things in security and medicine where you say, "Oh, nobody could be stupid enough to do that," and then they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right.
All right.
I think that's a wrap for this time
Yeah, I think so too. And I have another
session.
one on Tuesday.
Another one on Tuesday, and we'll be in September.
We will.